Hello, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Lana. I will run this. As usually, I'm running the Sitecore User Robotics meetups. So we're happy to see you again back to our meetup, and let me share some good news with you. So. In October, we celebrated our first year anniversary, and during that year, we had 4 meetups with speakers from US, Slovakia, Belgium, Latvia. We have reached 117 members on our meetup group. And there was also a big event, a Sitecore Symposium in October, where 104 companies globally were recognized for their experience and use of Sitecore solutions. And by the way, our Kranti was among 10 subject master experts from Global Accenture and Avanade who participated in around 40 brain date sessions with customers. So that's really, October was full of big events for us, big news.
Yeah, and one was with Jason too.
Oh, even, yeah. So we have, you see which people we have today. So, and as usual, we keep updated our social media channels. So keep follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, subscribe on YouTube and Meetup, and you will be updated on the latest events, industry trends, and see video recordings. So we have also updated or edited our Meetup videos in YouTube, and we will plan some other adjustments there. So it will be more easy and comfortable for your search of the topics. The agenda is very tight. We will have 2 speakers from Canada, Jason and Jeff. Jason will speak about SaaS to the future, and Jeff will show us Sitecore GSS development workflow with Storybook. After each topic, we will have Q&A session, as I mentioned, and in between, there will be an interesting activity for all of you. So I hope you will like it. Okay, so just a quick intro. Jason is a head of developer advocacy at Sitecore. He's also technical architect, evangelist, and developer for over 20 years. He's a specialist in development and DevRel, as we call it, and DevOps. And this is really short summary. So, Jason, you may tell a bit more about yourself. So I pass the mic to you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And the topic of today with SaaS to the future is, I'm just going to get the screen up here for my slides. I think you might have seen some of this for those of you who have gone to Symposium, but I want to kind of walk through the idea of what we're trying to get at with where we're going as Sitecore. What does it mean for us to be going SaaS to the future? What are we trying to do here? So I very thank you for the introduction. Those of you who don't know me, Jason, I have a global group of developer advocates. We try to get into the community. We try to get people excited about stuff. So we tend to try to look at what's coming next and play around with it and try to help out where we can. It was mentioned there's going to be a Q&A session at the end. I'd also kind of want to find out what your thoughts are, not necessarily just questions, but like what's going on and how your teams are kind of looking at this and how this might change you. I want to get that kind of feedback. So hopefully you have some thoughts you can share. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of things, I do want to do a little announcement about Sitecore Virtual Developer Day, because next week is the deadline for the call for speakers. So if you have a chance, please think of a topic, get it in. We want to see what kind of cool stuff you're working on. This is, I think, the 5th year that we've run this virtual event. It's always been great content, well attended, lots of people who come and watch sessions from people who are in the trenches doing stuff. And we want you to share your story too. So make sure you get that in. Now, I mentioned I wanted to talk about where Sitecore is going, but there's a little bit about the future of where the industry is going to. A little bit about the past and kind of how Sitecore is aligning with that. Now, we only have 30 minutes, so I'm not going to go into the entire history, but we have been talking at Sitecore with all of you about SaaS for a while now. And there's been a lot of investment in how do we get to that next technology wave. And this is where the industry's headed. But it's not the first time the industry's been going this way. Our industry has this habit of back and forth trying to solve similar technology programs, whether it's server-side applications or client-side applications. We, back and forth, we kind of go as what the next great thing is to do. Ultimately, what we try to get at is people want these big, rich media and applications that are really, great to use. They also want it to be fast and get down on they don't want to use a lot of data. They wanted lighter weight, faster downloads. So we keep repeating, going back and forth as to how we're going to solve this problem. Now, I got into web applications a while ago, about 20 years. And at the time, I started going into Java applets. I was working for this little product company that did stuff in the industry for education. This is an actual screenshot from a program that I used to work on. I think somebody was logging some support ticket I found online, but we had this concept of islands, and you were in your browser and you'd click through your islands, different courses and degrees. You'd see how your courses match up. The system would make recommendations based on what you've taken already and what would be a good way, and figure out how close to finishing your degree were you. And this was about a 4 meg download, which at the time was huge, is like you're downloading a full application here into your browser, right? So people had to wait a while to get started. But then you get this whole in-browser experience, and it seemed really quick, and you didn't have that kind of, at the time, GeoCities type of slowness going between stuff. Now, at the time, this was really like advanced stuff. And it was talking to server-side executables through using like bit level streaming. Like we had to be down to the bit trying to optimize how fast this was communicating. And we'd have to worry about things like, well, what if people are on different versions? Like, how do we version the API and protocol that it's using? And, it's very familiar to what we have to worry about these days, too. We've been doing this kind of API layer around business logic for a long time. But then back in the day, the industry started moving away from this kind of like heavier download and this applet thing, and people didn't want to wait. They wanted their sites to be fast, like the good old days, those black and white simple text. Why wasn't it fast like that? So we did something more modern, classic ASP, server-side rendered. All we're sending over is a little bit of CSS and some HTML. It's super fast. Everybody's happy about the speed. But then we've got everything server side. It's closer to where the back end is. Seems like we've got the right thing. And then lo and behold, years later, people are like, you know what? It's just not rich enough in experience, all this HTML. So you start building thin clients in JavaScript, talking to a back end, and away we go. We're going back and forth over and over again. All of this, what I'm getting at is that we've been on this kind of journey in our industry for a very long time about how do we deliver applications quickly with rich experiences. And 10 years ago, we called it service-oriented architecture. I even remember writing a blog post where I talked about how Sitecore would fit inside a service-oriented architecture as the CMS content component. We have been recognizing this as a problem to solve for a long time, but it's taken a really long time to get here, where API is considered the default. So we've done the monoliths with APIs around it, to microservices with application logic. You've got serverless, then edge. There's this constant evolution. We want to distribute, we want to isolate, and this brings our industry to this state we're in now, where vendors are going to sell you an API-driven software, has all the logic, all the applications. You don't worry about the hosting of that part. The developer consumes it and worries about their application and how they're going to deploy that, and they want ultimate flexibility. That's where we're at today. This approach means way more integration. Now, I don't know about everybody here on the call, but when I was running projects, if someone came in and told me I had to integrate 6 or 7 systems, my hand's going up, red flag on budget and timeline, because like, that's a huge risk. Why am I doing all this system integration, right? So how is it that we've gone from thinking like that to now today saying, yeah, I want to integrate it, That's definitely how I want to work. And what's happened is that because of the API first movement, there's so many more options that we've hit this like tipping point where the balance of how much is available with API first, it's not just API slapped on, has raised the bar. There's so many more options available where you can do everything at the API level and it's easy, which forces other people to come along, because why would you work on a difficult system integration if you have an easier option? And this means that teams that are evaluating, do I get an integrated solution or do I get something with integration that I have to work on, becomes an easier question to make. You don't just all of a sudden throw it out because there's a system integration there. So that choice is now there for a lot of teams. So Sitecore has been going down this journey, right, along with it. And you've seen things like the item APIs that got added, and then JSS, later headless services, all coming towards this API first idea. And I think SaaS really started at Sitecore when we acquired Style Labs and got Content Hub. That's when we really had real SaaS inside of Sitecore. And later we did automated personalization and then Experience Edge, where we got content delivery, both for Content Hub and XM. So we kind of started going. And then the train really started moving. That's when we hit BoxEver and 451 and very recently Reflection and Mooseend. All of this bringing us to a different state of what we have as options. So I want to talk through what those options are today, just very quickly. But in general, it's that industry is moving and Sitecore is moving with it. And the industry is moving away from platform and towards this idea that Gartner calls the composable DXP. And Sitecore has always done this traditional approach, right? Everything tightly together, single architecture. It's natively grown to work together. You don't go and grab SXA and you just work on SXA and nothing else. It all works as a piece. And it's intended to be that way. It offers a simplicity and it gives you really good overlapping features that can leverage each other. This is how platform vendors and Sitecore XP, that's how it works today. So it attracts a lot of people who want to quickly get a whole lot of features digitally transformed, because this is a nice all-in-one solution. And then there's downsides, right? Sometimes that means it's complex to host. You've got to get all these pieces you're running. You might only be using a part right now. So you got a trade-off. Then we look at something like Composable. You got a bunch of standalone products and the customer's building out this DXP, integrating all these pieces together. People usually call them best of breeds. So some of these components could be from the same vendor. But typically what is in this model is people are buying from different vendors. They've got all kinds of different options available and they're pulling it together. At Sitecore, what we see is we need to offer both of these. We need to have the fit that makes sense for a customer. There's going to be customers where it makes sense to do platform, and there's customers where Composable makes sense. So we want to have both options. But the Composable option has some benefits that we see, where people can get what they need right now. Especially from a business perspective, you're looking at, return on investment and total cost of ownership. You're only purchasing the thing you're going to use now. You only implement the piece you're going to use now, and then you go get the thing you need when you're ready for it. So this is a really great way to get to value. On the development side, people are used to working now in this headless fashion, having total flexibility over how they build, where they deploy, how they consume. So going in this manner, the API first headless approach gives that flexibility. They can tailor their solution to specifically what they need to solve right now. So ultimately, what does Sitecore want to do? Here's a bunch of capabilities. We want to give you that. And then within that, how does a team have an option to solve it? Like which way is going to be the right way for that particular scenario? So you can solve these different pieces in multiple ways. This is going to require a whole lot of speed. We have to get going, and like the work has started. There's a whole lot of acquisitions, a whole lot of product innovation. Like everybody's at full tilt. You've seen Sitecore growing as well to try to accelerate along this way. We need to get there, and we need to get there fast. And ultimately, we're building it around three concepts, so pillars we call them. So content, commerce, and experience, where the different pieces, and I'm going to walk through kind of each one. And we've been using this infinity loop because we recognize that people are not necessarily just going to do a bunch of content and then do a bunch of experience and then do commerce. It's not a stepping stone. It's not a path. You're kind of looping through it all. It's all connected and it doesn't end. You're constantly iterating and doing the next thing. Now, when we look at content, this has kind of been where Sitecore's core has been for the last 20 years, right? And then when we acquired Style Labs and Content Hub, we started getting to the SaaS version of how we're going to address content. So everybody knows about the digital asset management side of things, where you can have really great tools for, all your major media and things like that. The content operations side that we call, which is things like marketing strategy, collaboration, workflow, all that part of the marketing team working together, kind of offers the other part of what teams need from a content tool. But there's something missing. And that's where we're going next, right? We need to offer in the Composable DXP a true headless CMS. Now, traditionally, the way CMS is done in the industry is that things are very tightly coupled, right? So you get a lot of power in a small container. Might be difficult to implement or difficult to scale, the tight coupling, right? So the industry came out with the idea of headless, which gave all this flexibility to the implementation team. It kind of forgot about the business user. You took a compromise. So in the traditional model, the business user had a better access, but you had less flexibility on the development side. You had to compromise. Headless CMS, you had to compromise. What Sitecore sees is that we believe that you should have a combination where you don't compromise. You get both audiences, get the best out of a content management system. So at Symposium, we announced something we're referring to as front end as a service. And as a product, it's going to be called Sitecore Symphony. And this is going to give an evolution beyond what we've been doing already with Horizon and go up and have a standalone product that's multi-tenant, that can work across the different parts of the Composable DXP and give the business users a single place that they go and manage everything. They don't have to think about, oh, well, for this tool, I have to go over there. So that's how we're looking at kind of the business user side of things. And then we also want to introduce Experience Manager Cloud, which is going to give that kind of no compromise content management system. So it has to be headless. It's got to have REST, GraphQL interfaces, right? Truly API first. And we've been progressing this way with our headless services. And we need to get it all the way to be cloud native. It has to be the last Sitecore CMS you install, right? We have to solve that problem of upgrades. It has to go away. And we also need to make sure that this is ready for developers to use the modern front-end frameworks. We need to be able to go on CDN, static site, all that. It has to be ready for that. So ultimately, when we look back at that idea of the no compromise CMS, it's going to be a combination of things. The work we've done with Experience Edge, our partnership with Vercel, capabilities that we'll introduce with Sitecore Symphony, and also Experience Manager Cloud. So by taking these different pieces, we can create that end-to-end, easy-to-use, good developer experience, good marketing experience. The no compromise solution, that's what we want to get to. Now, when we look at the next pillar, which is experience, this kind of usually layers on top of a lot of the content core. And this is things like customer data management, personalization, testing, marketing automation. And XP has always had stuff for that. And we need a composable DXP version of that. And that's where we saw Boxever and Moosend enter into the Sitecore family and bring about this idea of cloud native solutions. Now, Moosend is really interesting, which is going to become, you've seen probably the new docs on Sitecore Send and our new option there. That's going to be really the messaging platform within the Composable DXP. And it's really easy to get started. You can get campaigns going, very intuitive, right? It's addressing a very specific need. Then we have the idea of customer data. right? It's at the core of a lot of stuff. But customer data might be with a Sitecore product, but it might be used with something else. You need a centralized place where you're bringing in and getting real-time analytics and customer insights and all that. So BoxEver added a bunch of that capabilities, and we started taking the BoxEver technology and also allowing us to have things like personalization. So by personalizing, we can now have a piece that's easy to add to your website, just do the personalization, and you might have another CDP in play, or you're using Sitecore CDP, but you can kind of separate those capabilities. I personally think that the personalized piece is going to be an easy way for someone who has XM to really start going into how do I get into Composable, because you can easily add it onto your existing site, and that allows you to be like getting part of the solution into that kind of cloud native solution. Now, the final section that I wanted to talk about in terms of the Composable was commerce. Experience Commerce has been doing B2C and storefronts, and it does it really well. But we need a composable option. We also had some other capabilities we wanted to look at, which was B2X and product discovery. So our acquisitions of 451 with Order Cloud and Reflection, which became Sitecore Discover, really allowed us to address that. So 451 and Order Cloud gave us that supremely scalable, like mock architecture. It doesn't also have to be restricted to storefronts. It's headless. You can do it across channels, which allows us to look at doing more of a full commerce ecosystem and not just the website. And the other thing with the Sitecore Discover was, but how do you get the customer to find the product? You got this huge product catalog. How do they find what they need? And Sitecore Discover is going to have this great ability for us to give like AI recommendations and nice preview searches as you're typing, and have a really great experience for users to find what they need, and ultimately about connecting that full commerce flow. Now, there was an opportunity that came out of this, and it wasn't a commerce opportunity, but acquiring Reflection also gave us a world-class search team. And this is going to allow us to offer a new thing called Sitecore Search, which we can load on top of Content Hub or on top of XM or whatever, being able to have indexed content that you can then have those same kind of AI recommendations and preview search, all that stuff that we get with Sitecore Discover, but now for content search on a website search. So that's going to be a really cool, unique opportunity that we can do in the future and start launching that using that team and the technology they've built. So when I started all this, I mentioned how the industry has gotten to this point of like plug and play vendor apps being hosted. So how does Sitecore fit into this? Let's imagine a team that is building a website and they want to do some basic personalization, and that's it. So they might look at, okay, I need XM Cloud to do my kind of website. I need Content Hub to manage my assets. So I need the DAM part. And I need personalized for the personalization. So that's all they choose. And they can use Experience Edge and Symfony and Vercel, and they get the full solution of what they need in this package. And you can deploy quickly, and you're only worrying about the thing you need now. But another team might be addressing a totally different problem. They might be looking at a commerce scenario where they want to have a product catalog and they want, discovery on that, and they need to do things like communicate with their customers around birthdays or special events or maybe abandoned cart scenarios, that type of thing. So they might look at a combination of Order Cloud with Discover and Content Hub for assets and Send for the marketing automation. Notice there's no XM in here. There's no personalized CDP. They're solving a different problem. They pick the pieces that they need. So the Composable DXP is looking at how do we give you the options, all the capabilities, and allow you to pick the pieces of the puzzle that work for your puzzle, which is a really great option, right? That we have options, and it plays nice with other systems, and you can integrate with other vendors. But why would you go and buy multiple things from Sitecore if it's all a bunch of standalone products? And that is the piece that's missing. So best of breed is great, better together is what we need to deliver. We need it so that when you choose CDP and you choose send, that there's a magic bonus that you get that you don't get if you combine it with somebody else's. What is that Sitecore better together piece? That's a part of our critical roadmap that we have to get to. It has to make sense. It has to be logical that when you need two different problems, you come to Sitecore and they solve both of them for you. So that's the piece that our product team needs to deliver. So I talked a lot about Composable DXP, but we got a few minutes here. I want to quickly go over 10.2 because we put it out in November. We're still doing stuff on the platform side, which is really cool. And you can check the release notes for all the amazing stuff across everything. But when I looked at it, I saw this release as like a bridge to headless, like the way that teams that don't want to rebuild can finally get there. And there's some really cool stuff that's been done to fill out that story, like Horizon being able to do remote rendering hosts now. That's really cool. Being able to have kind of a better integration with Horizon and SXA that's been kind of evolving over time. The Experience Edge that we released earlier in the summer, now being on XM, now you've got another way to use an existing XM and go towards that headless story. I also thought that the announcement at Symposium around Headless Managed Cloud is going to be pretty cool because a lot of people, they look at Managed Cloud and it's like this huge bunch of like servers and stuff like that. And being able to have an option that has no content delivery in it, that it's just a trimmed down Sitecore end that then hooks into Vercel and Experience Edge. We then have an option for people who want to go to that Jamstack approach and then have a Managed Cloud option that helps with that. It's not SaaS, but it's on the road there so that you can have kind of an in-between step if you're not fully ready for a SaaS story. Biggest thing, the thing that I liked the most was that ability to publish like an SXA or MVC site out to Experience Edge, be able to do kind of the headless rendering on that type of site. That's going to open up people being able to go to headless very quickly, get Core Web Vitals better, do Jamstack, do Vercel, all that stuff without having to rebuild. I'm sure there's going to be some hiccups along the way as certain things may not match up exactly, but being able to unlock that in 10.2, I thought was really cool to be able to allow people to kind of like incrementally convert over to headless. So if we think about 10.2 as a bridge to headless, and we think about Experience Edge being in there, and earlier I mentioned Composable DXP, the whole idea is to work with other systems that you can integrate easily. XM can be one of those systems. Like we don't have to think of XM as outside the Composable DXP. You can integrate XM with Personalize or Content Hub or whatever today. So you could go out and build a Composable DXP without having to throw away XM at all. So I think that's really cool. That's going to be a lot of ways for teams to kind of get started on this whole path if they haven't already, without needing to go and think that they're throwing it all away. So I think this is going to be a really great, awesome opportunity to start seeing some kind of hybrid solutions out there. So to recap, lots of options. Probably going to make it very difficult on solution architects who have to like figure out what does this customer need. There's too many choices now. But I think it's really exciting to be able to choose what works. If a customer says, I can't go to SaaS, I have these data residency requirements, or I need it to run on a server in my closet, whatever, like there's an option for that. So as different restrictions or business needs come up, you have different options that you can go with. I haven't personally seen Sitecore do what we're doing now, like this level of aggressive growth and innovation. It's been a long time. If ever, I don't remember seeing this. So as someone who gets to be on the team that kind of looks into what's coming next, it's been really exciting. I personally can't crystal ball what's going to happen next. There's so much happening. So I know I'm excited, and what I'd like to know is find out kind of what folks are thinking on your side. Like, how does this affect you? What are you looking forward to? So with that, why don't we turn the floor over to the group here and see what questions we might have.
Okay, so maybe I can start, Jason. So pretty exacted, I mean, SaaS to the future, yeah, composable way, that's good. One question I have regarding 10.2, good that you bought this MVC to Jamstack, but how much things are going in the direction of SXA? Because in the last years, a lot of sites are using SXA. Is it easy to convert the SXA sites as well to Jamstack mode, or you're still working on it?
So that MVC to Jamstack thing that I mentioned in 10.2 includes SXA. So yes, if you have built your site on SXA, you can publish it out. You can use Experience Edge. You can publish it to use Vercel if you want to do that. So that static site capability is there now for SXA.
Thank you. And one more question regarding the reflection, right? So is Solr going to stay as the main indexing in future, or?
Well, as I mentioned, there are two things. There's the kind of platform approach and the composable approach, and they are not the same thing. So we already have options like Content Hub that don't run on Solr.
Yeah.
And they have a different search engine underneath it. And whatever happens in the composable side is not what's happening in platform. Now, whether the platform team decides to go and they want to go away from Solr and do something, that's up to them. But Sitecore Discover itself is a separate piece. So its indexing is not what's in the platform. So it can index what's in there and grab that data, but the goal there when we put out Sitecore Search eventually as the content search is not that it is suddenly the engine of XM or XP. It's a separate product you get, and it happens to be consuming either Content Hub or consuming XM. So don't think about the roadmap of Solr being tied to what we do with that. Now, it could be that as we do that, we learn some cool things, and maybe we decide in XMXP we should do some cool stuff as well. But that is a completely, it's more of like deciding what it is we should do as opposed to we've got this, therefore we have to get rid of that.
One last question about Experience Edge.
Yep.
So do you think there is a need for Experience Edge for XP topology as well? Is it in works?
Oh, you mean in terms of having things like personalization information? Yeah. I think originally we were thinking that way. I think it's still in discussion, but with Sitecore Personalize, it doesn't really make as much sense because we can do the personalization on the edge already.
Yeah.
So we're...
No, what happens to existing?
Whether we would add that into Experience Edge, and I think Experience Edge right now, at least the plan is to keep it as that's a content delivery mechanism, and then you do personalization with Sitecore Personalize.
Yeah, but in future upgrades, better to suggest downgrading to XM topology, make use of CDP or in a more composable way, right?
I think it depends on the customer, but yeah, I mean, if I was going to walk into a room and I knew nothing about the customer scenario, but I knew they had XM, I'd say, yeah, you probably, if you want XM and you want these other functionalities, I would start pointing them at the composable options because I know that that's going to give you the ability to do headless. You can do it on the edge. You can do the static sites that you want to do. So I would direct them that way. But I think each scenario you have to look at what makes sense for that customer. I think there's going to be some customers where XP makes more sense because they have to do so much and they want it to be so tightly coupled. That is something that would be on the roadmap, and do they need it today? Like different customers are at different places.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? If somebody's ready for, if XP is the right thing, then yeah, go with XP. But I think a default stance of trying to get them into composable is a good idea.
Yeah, thank you. Peter?
We have another, yeah.
Can I go next? Yeah, hi, Jason.
Hello, Peter.
A question regarding the XM Cloud. Can you maybe spot some light on the architecture and the underlying technology? The reason why I'm asking because the the clients probably would ask, is it like a .NET still? Is it going to be like .NET 6, or is it going to be Elasticsearch behind this? Or we just still kind of just porting .NET framework to .NET Core or .NET 6 and just keep the same XM basically with Sitecore kernel, etc.
Yeah, I think we're still in some heavy decision-making modes on some of those questions. The ultimate problem we want to solve is that you shouldn't have to care what XM Cloud is built on, that your team builds with what they want to build with, and it should work. So I think that's like the end goal of what we want to get to. And right now it's how do we solve that on specific timelines, and like, okay, if it's the spring and we want to put something out, what is it that's achievable by then? And then what do we get later, right? So get into that iterative SaaS model. So I can't answer you like, what's the topology? We honestly do not know yet what that's going to look like specifically. We have a lot of stuff that's in flight, and some of it's working out and some of it's not. So we're trying different things, especially the DevOps flow, I think, is somewhere we're focused a lot, is how do you build your solution, build customizations, deploy that into an XM Cloud, and then have that work with a headless model so that it's also available across. I think that's a very critical piece that we're working on right now, is defining the details around that. Mark Van Alst, who's on my team, is actually taking over some work right now to try to put together some enablement around things like this, because a lot of people are having questions. So we're working on doing like an FAQ type of thing on what we know. And hopefully we can get that out soon to kind of give people an idea of what might be coming later. And then as we get closer to release and things are kind of firmed up as to what's going to be available when, then we'll be able to have something a little more firm on what that looks like. Like, what does the topology look like? What does the DevOps flow look like? How do you work with it? That'll be something my team is very keen on figuring out and then putting out.
Yeah, this is already some of the concern that we're starting kind of raising around, for example, Sitecore Personalize, and how you, for example, deploy the decision model from your code. And here, of course, we have the same concerns. Do we still keep this concept of an item, the content tree and the serialization? Is it something that should stay there and it will be exactly the same inherited from existing XM, or it will be rebuilt from scratch?
Yeah, I can't answer that, unfortunately. Unfortunately, we don't have a final answer on a lot of that stuff. It's quite possible we'll have multiple different ways of working with XM Cloud, in that there might be different tiers and stuff like that, which would have different capabilities as to how much customization you have and capabilities. So right now, we just don't have those answers.
But is it like a spring next year when we know more about this, or?
That's the hope, that we will be able to publicly go out and be like, we figured it out. This is what you can do today, right, in the spring. But when an executive goes out and goes on stage and says a delivery date, I don't know. I don't know about y'all, but I've gotten used to the fact that that's great. I'll listen to what the engineering team tells me when something's going to come out. So I think we're definitely aiming as a business that we want something out in spring. What that's going to be is not necessarily going to be the final version, and I think we're still waiting to see from the product team, what does that release roadmap look like, and what do we have when. I think those decisions are still in flight.
I think it's understandable. I think the only questions I'm asking is all coming from the technology strategy perspective for the clients, so what they should prepare for for the future. And I think the key important part is, can they just migrate the content from the current XM to the XM Cloud in the future? Yep. So do you plan to kind of allow this, and it's easy to move from one to another? Because that will be the selling point.
So I think that's the plan. Whether or not that's available in spring or not, we want to be able to have people who are on XM go and transition over. Like that's a goal, right? Like you want to have that.
Yeah. So it's likely that the basically the data modeling with the template and multiple inheritance, etc., will stay the same. It's not will be like in Content Hub, which is completely different.
Possibly. As I said, it's all stuff that's in flight. Maybe it's going to be done through APIs for a migration or something like that, so it can kind of map it. All of that is in flight,
but it still is
that story.
It's thought through, right? So how you migrate from one to the new one, from the existing one to the new one.
How do you migrate is not something that is finalized yet. And in fact, just knowing historically how we do things at Sitecore, I would expect that the first versions are going to be aimed more at, new customers, right? And getting them clean on there, and then that, because that's the first problem to solve, and then usually the migration story is usually like slowly afterwards. That's typically how we've done it. We'll see what the product team can prioritize this time around.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
And no worries. Great questions. And I do have to follow up on that migration story, because that's something I've been asking about too.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. That was a really nice discussion. Thank you. We already tried to complete your wishes for the next topics, and we will continue that in the future. So that's also important. And yeah, wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. And we will see you in 2022. In a couple of months, we will have another meetup. So keep tuned.